All right. How many people here have heard of Christopher Emdin? 3 people. All right. So, frankly, if you just ignored everything I said and you just Googled Christopher Emdin and then got on Amazon and bought his book for white folks who teach in the hood, that would probably be a better use of your time, I'm just being honest. For those of you not familiar with Chris Emdin, he is a professor at Columbia. He's a tenured professor, science, technology, and mathematics. He's also a Harvard fellow. He grew up in Brooklyn. He wanted to be a teacher because, first of all, he's an African-American male. None of his teachers looked like him. They were boring, and he was completely disinterested by school. So he went to college to become the teacher that he wished he had when he was in school. And then it turned out he just became exactly like the teachers that he had. If you listen to Chris talk, he'll tell you that what he learned in college about being a teacher was that we were teaching kids how to do school, and we were teaching kids complacency. Do what I say, do as I say to do, and you'll be fine. It wasn't actual teaching. So he wrote this book called For White Folks Who Teach in the Hood, and it's basically 9 or 10 chapters of just how you can engage students so that you can better understand your students, but also incorporate their voice and their world into your classroom so that everyone can be connected. So my wife got her master's degree in curriculum. She wrote her master's thesis on cultural differentiation. And she told me about Chris Emdin, and now I'm a Chris Emdin fanboy. I follow him everywhere I can. Back at Muskegon Middle School, we had a couple of teachers who were struggling with relationship building and classroom management. As the assistant principal there, we brought Chris Emdin's work in, and they built what Chris calls a co-generative dialogue, which is basically a classroom improvement team, where you take a certain small chunk of each of your classes, you meet with them and buy them pizza one day every month, and you get feedback on your classes. And then you learn from your students how they're perceiving you, and you learn about their world. And so we had a couple of teachers do this, and the results in their classrooms were remarkable. Fast forward 4 years later, I become the principal at Orchard View Middle School, and Dr. Frang back here says, hey, we don't have an after-school program. We have all these kids who, they don't even want to leave because they don't really have anywhere to go or anything to do. What are we going to do for them? And after spending 12 years at Muskegon Public Schools, I didn't know my students at Orchard View. It was a different demographic, it was a different community, it was a different culture. I didn't know these students. So I thought back to the teachers who didn't necessarily know their students in the classroom and the co-generative dialogues that they built as a classroom improvement team. And we decided, let's build a school improvement team. Let's build a co-generative team of students that'll meet once a month, 2 different teams, 20 kids each, so 40 kids total. And we called them our focus group. And when we brought these students in, we fed them pizza during lunch. It's amazing what you can get with kids if you just buy them lunch. They're going to get a free lunch in the lunchroom, but if that pizza is from Domino's or from Papa John's instead of from Chartwell's, they'll pretty much do anything for you. So we made sure that our teams accurately reflected our demographic. I had high achievers that were bored in class, and I had students who just were completely disconnected from school. And we told them that your first challenge is to create an after-school program. You tell me what you need. We're going to brainstorm this together in 2 different focus groups, and then my job is to find out a way to make it happen. And so I'm writing all these different things on the board. They want to train animals. They want to learn how to cook. They want to work on cars. They just want to play capture the flag. One kid, I think, suggested they drive go-karts in the hallways. I haven't made that one happen yet, I won't lie. So we're drafting all these things up, and I'm proud to say that we were able to make almost all of it happen. Mondays was cooking after school. We partnered with Dog Blessed, which is a humane shelter right around the corner from our school. They came in and they started training students. They said they had a bunch of animals that hadn't been adopted because they hadn't been around human beings enough. And they said they'd be more than happy to just bring their dogs into our school so that the kids could train the animals because they'd be more likely to be adopted if they were excited to see another human being. So we were able to make all of these things happen, and it was really, really wonderful. But during my first co-gen, I had a young man who, in my mind, was the student that we created this process for. It was the young man who didn't like to come to school, His head was down in class. He was failing everything. I've got to check in on him at least once a week, set up goals. I harass him constantly. His head's down in class, and then here I've invited him to my co-generative dialogue where he gets to be the voice of the school, and his head is still down and he's just completely disconnected. So as the kids left my co-generative dialogue, I asked him if he'd come back to my office. And I said, dude, this was for you. You're bored with school. This is your opportunity to change that, to turn school around. What more could I do for you? And he said, Mr. Smith, frankly, school's just not for me. I'm here because you make me be here, and because my mom makes me be here. But my dad works on race cars, and the only thing I want to learn how to do is weld. And you don't teach me how to weld at Orchard View Middle School. I said, well, this is the information I need. We don't teach you how to weld at Orchard Middle School yet. So after this student left, I contacted Kyle Fiebig over at the CTC, and I said, I think I might have some students that might be interested in welding. And he said, that sounds great. I said, there's 6th graders. Oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting thought. How many do you have? I said, I don't know. Next month, we met with our focus group, our co-generative dialogue, had my young man in the front row. I added on our big long list that had just been left up in that room, I added welding. How many of you would be interested in welding after school? Everybody raise their hand. I honestly don't think half of them knew what welding was, but it was on the list. And so they're like, yeah, because it's an opportunity, and there's a lot of kids who just want something to do. And maybe it would be welding. So I said, all right, this purpose of this focus group is we have all these amazing things. Animal training, we're going to be growing, we're going to be cooking, we're going to be playing capture the flag in the hallways. There's all these different things we're going to be doing. Now you need to take this list out to your peers, because tomorrow at lunch, you're going to be having everyone sign up. And I told my young man, you're in charge of finding me welders. The next day, 54 kids signed up to take welding at the CTC, which is way too many. So I said, here, we'll break it down. Whoever returns the permission slip to weld can take welding. 36 of the 54 kids returned their permission slip. So talked with Kyle Fiebig over at the CTC. We broke it up into 2 sections, 18 on Monday, 18 on Thursday. Very excited. I don't think half the kids even really knew what to expect. They just heard they were going to get to play with fire, and that sounded awesome. After our first day of welding, Wood TV8 kind of got a hold of the story, and they did a piece. And my young man, who was completely disengaged from school, if you look at it on the news, you'll get to see this young man, because he's there with his Orchard View Middle School shirt, very proudly talking about how his school actually teaches him what he wants to do. And he gets to weld. After that aired, 3 different superintendents or principals contacted Kyle at the CTC and wanted to know why Orchard View Middle School was getting special treatment and how come their kids get to weld and nobody else does. So my Thursday group got cut back to a Monday group, because now we were spread out 4 days a week, and now 4 different schools are sending 6th through 8th graders to weld, because one young man that was disengaged from school had this idea, and the adults in the room were ready to try to make that happen. Today, right now, there are 15 kids from Orchard View Schools in Montague at the airport, because somebody thought that it would be a good idea for us to train kids about aviation, avionics, and flying planes. This young man that was completely disengaged at school was there yesterday, is there today, and they're all going to get to go fly in an airplane on Thursday because of this idea. His younger brother yesterday, when I sat with these students, was playing with a wind turbine, using the screws and the pliers, because the goal was to make the wind turbine power a little light bulb at the bottom of the wind turbine. They had to build it themselves at what we're calling our little aviation camp. And as this young man's little brother joined him, I heard him say, why can't school be like this? And I got chills. I thought, I don't know, why can't it? So our focus of our co-generative dialogue this year, we'll be bringing in our PBL students. We'll be adding them as part of our demographic in our school, so that we can take the things that are working well at Orchard View Middle School. We'll get feedback from our students, and we're going to build those programs from inside out, taking the student voice, what their needs are, what makes them tick, And we're going to make sure that that drives our school improvement. And I recommend you do the same. There you go.
Awesome.